I opened my eyes to the harsh white ceiling of a hospital room, and for a moment, I couldn't remember where I was or how I got there. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry bees, and there was that distinct smell, you know the one, antiseptic mixed with something else I could never quite name. My head felt heavy, like it was filled with cotton, and when I tried to move my arm, I felt the pull of an IV tube taped to my skin. A nurse appeared beside me, her young face breaking into a gentle smile. "Mrs. Patterson, you're awake. How are you feeling?" "Confused," I managed to whisper, my throat dry as sandpaper. "What happened?" She poured me some water and helped me take small sips. "You collapsed at the grocery store 3 days ago." "A stroke, but thankfully a minor one. You've been drifting in and out of consciousness. 3 days." The words echoed in my foggy mind. 3 whole days. My eyes scanned the room instinctively, looking for the flowers, the cards, the familiar faces that should have been there. But the room was empty. No vases on the windowsill, no balloons tied to the chair, no children or grandchildren keeping vigil by my bedside. Just me, an 87-year-old woman, alone in a sterile hospital room. "Has anyone—" I started, but the words caught in my throat. The nurse understood, though. She always did. That's the thing about good nurses. They see everything, even the things you're trying to hide. Her smile faltered just a bit. "The hospital contacted the numbers in your phone, Mrs. Patterson. We left several messages. I nodded slowly, pretending that the tightness in my chest was just from the stroke and not from the crushing weight of disappointment. Of course they hadn't come. Why would they? I'd been nothing but a burden to them for years now, or at least that's what my daughter-in-law Claire loved to remind me. "Thank you," I whispered to the nurse, whose name tag read Sarah. "You're very kind." She squeezed my hand gently before checking my vitals and leaving me alone with my thoughts. And oh, how those thoughts came flooding back like a dam had burst. You see, I wasn't always alone. Once upon a time, I had a full house, a house bursting with laughter, scraped knees, bedtime stories, and the beautiful chaos that comes with raising 3 children. My husband Robert and I, we built a good life together. He worked at the steel mill for 40 years, and I worked too. Double shifts at the diner, taking in laundry, doing whatever it took to make sure our kids had everything they needed. Michael was my oldest. He came into this world on a snowy January morning in 1958, red-faced and screaming, and I loved him from the very first moment I held him. He grew up to be handsome like his father, with those same warm brown eyes and that dimple in his left cheek when he smiled. Michael was going to be someone special. I just knew it. Then came Jennifer, my sweet girl, born 2 years later. She had my blonde hair and her daddy's stubborn streak. Jennifer was the one who would sit with me in the kitchen, helping me roll out pie dough with her tiny hands, flour dusting her nose. And finally, Thomas, my baby, arrived in 1965. He was the surprise blessing, the one who kept us young even when we were getting older. Thomas had a gentleness about him that reminded me of spring rain, soft and nourishing. For years, our little house on Maple Street was filled with the sounds of childhood. Bicycles in the driveway, Halloween costumes spread across the living room floor, Christmas mornings with wrapping paper everywhere. Robert and I, we didn't have much money, but we had love. We had family dinners every night at 6 o'clock sharp. We had Sunday mornings at church followed by pancakes. I worked my fingers to the bone to give them everything. When Michael wanted to go to college, I took on extra hours at the diner. When Jennifer needed braces, I sold my mother's pearl necklace. the only valuable thing I owned. When Thomas wanted piano lessons, I learned to cut everyone's hair at home to save money, and they all grew up. They all succeeded. Michael became a lawyer, Jennifer married a successful businessman, and Thomas got his degree in finance. I was so proud I could burst. My children, making something of themselves, living the American dream that Robert and I had worked so hard to give them. But here's what they don't tell you about success. Sometimes when your children climb the ladder, they forget who built it for them. Sometimes they reach the top and look down at you standing at the bottom, and instead of gratitude, they feel embarrassment. Robert died 6 years ago. Heart attack, quick and painless, the doctor said, though I'm not sure anything about losing your partner of 52 years can be painless. One morning he kissed me goodbye on his way to his morning walk, and 2 hours later I got the call. That's when I first noticed the change in my children. At the funeral, they were attentive, hovering, making sure I was okay. But in the weeks and months that followed, the phone calls became shorter, the visits less frequent, the excuses more elaborate. Michael was busy with his law practice, always in court, always with clients. "I'll come next weekend, Mom," became his favorite phrase. Next weekend turned into next month, which turned into, "I'll see you at Thanksgiving." Jennifer, who had moved to California with her husband Richard, blamed the distance. "It's just so hard to get away, Mom." Richard's business, the kids' schedules. "You understand, don't you?" And I did understand. Or at least, I told myself I did. Thomas was the one who hurt the most because he lived only 30 minutes away, but he might as well have been on another planet. His wife Claire made it clear from the beginning that she didn't want an old woman interfering in their lives. I remember the first time she said it, right to my face, at Thomas's birthday dinner. "Mother Patterson," she'd said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "maybe it's best if you don't drop by unannounced anymore. We have our routines, and it's just disruptive." Thomas had looked down at his plate silent, choosing his wife over his mother. And I understood that too. A man should put his wife first. But did he have to put his mother last? I spent the last 6 years learning how to be alone. I learned that the house on Maple Street, once so full of noise and life, could be incredibly quiet. I learned that you can cook a full Thanksgiving dinner even when no one is coming. I learned that you can talk to yourself, and it doesn't make you crazy, it just makes you lonely. I tried not to be a burden. That's what old people worry about most, you know, being a burden. So I handled everything myself, fixed my own leaky faucet by watching YouTube videos, learned to use the self-checkout at the grocery store, took the bus to my doctor's appointments, and I told myself I was fine, I was independent, I was strong, until that Tuesday afternoon when I wasn't anymore. I was at the grocery store, reaching for a can of soup on the top shelf, cream of mushroom because I was going to make that tuna casserole Thomas used to love, even though I knew he wouldn't come to eat it. The light started to blur, and suddenly the floor was rushing up to meet me. I remember the sound of the can hitting the ground, rolling away, and then nothing. Now here I was, 3 days later, awake but alone. The first day after I woke up, I kept watching the door, sure that any minute one of my children would walk through it. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, my heart would jump. Every time the door opened, I'd try to sit up straighter, to smile, to look like I was okay. But it was always just the nurses, sweet Sarah with her kind eyes, an older nurse named Patricia who told me about her own mother, a young nursing assistant named Marcus who joked with me while he helped me to the bathroom. They never said anything about my family not visiting, but I could see it in their eyes, that mixture of pity and anger that medical staff get when they see elderly patients abandoned by the people who should love them most. On the second day, I asked Sarah if she could try calling my children again. "Of course, Mrs. Patterson," she said, but the way she said it told me she didn't expect much. She was right. Michael's secretary said he was in depositions all week. Jennifer's phone went straight to voicemail. And Thomas's wife Claire answered. I could hear her voice through Sarah's phone, sharp and annoyed. "Is this really an emergency?" "Thomas is very busy. She's always been dramatic about her health. Last time she called, it was just a cold. Last time I'd called was 2 years ago when I had pneumonia. I'd spent a week in bed, alone, barely able to get up for water." Sarah's jaw tightened as she listened. "Ma'am, your mother-in-law had a stroke. She's in the hospital. This is serious." "A stroke?" "Well, she's in the hospital, so she's being taken care of, right? I'll let Thomas know." Click. Sarah stood there for a moment, staring at the phone, and when she looked at me, there were tears in her eyes. Not mine, hers. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Patterson," she whispered. "It's all right, dear," I said, even though it wasn't all right, even though my heart felt like it was breaking all over again. They're busy people, successful people. I'm proud of them. But as Sarah left the room, I turned my face to the window and let the tears come. Silent tears that rolled down my wrinkled cheeks and onto the stiff hospital pillow. I cried for the babies I'd rocked to sleep, for the scraped knees I'd bandaged, for the homework I'd helped with, for the sacrifices I'd made. I cried for the woman I used to be, strong, needed, loved, and I cried for the woman I'd become, invisible, inconvenient, forgotten. By the third day, I'd stopped watching the door. I'd stopped hoping. Instead, I focused on the small kindnesses that came from unexpected places. Sarah brought me real coffee from the cafeteria, not that terrible stuff from the floor's break room. "Don't tell anyone," she whispered with a wink, "but everyone deserves decent coffee." Patricia sat with me during her lunch break, showing me pictures of her grandchildren on her phone. "This is Emma, she just started kindergarten. And this little troublemaker is Jack. He reminds me of my son at that age." I smiled at the photos, feeling both happy for her and achingly sad for myself. Where were my grandchildren's photos? Michael had 2 kids I'd only met 3 times. Jennifer had 1 daughter who didn't even know my name. Thomas and Claire had decided not to have children, said they wanted to focus on their careers and travels. Marcus, the young nursing assistant, reminded me of Thomas when he was younger, before Claire, before the money, before he learned to be ashamed of where he came from. Marcus would talk to me about his classes at community college, his dreams of becoming a nurse practitioner, his mother who worked 2 jobs to support him and his sister. "You remind me of my abuela," he told me one afternoon while helping me walk the hallway to rebuild my strength. She raised 7 kids basically by herself. Strongest woman I ever knew. "Your abuela sounds wonderful," I said, leaning on the walker. She was. "She died 2 years ago. I miss her every day." He paused, then added quietly, "I wish I'd visited her more when she was alive. I was always so busy with school and work. Now I'd give anything for one more conversation with her." His words hung in the air between us, and I had to swallow hard against the lump in my throat. That evening, Dr. Chen came to check on me. He was a neurologist, probably in his mid-50s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been overseeing my care since I arrived. "How are you feeling today, Mrs. Patterson?" he asked, reviewing my charts. "Better," I lied. Physically, I was recovering. Emotionally, I was drowning. He pulled up a chair beside my bed, which surprised me. Doctors are always so busy, rushing from patient to patient. But Dr. Chen sat down like he had all the time in the world. Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask you some questions about your medical history, he said. There are some things in your blood work that are unusual. Unusual? Is something wrong? A flutter of panic rose in my chest. No, nothing like that, he assured me quickly. But your blood type is extremely rare, a B negative with a specific Rh marker that only occurs in about 1 in 10 million people. I blinked at him. I don't understand. What does that mean? It means you're a universal donor for a very specific type of blood transfusion. But more than that. He paused, looking at me carefully. Mrs. Patterson, have you ever donated blood before? Specifically around 1968 or 1969? 1968. The year flashed through my mind like lightning. I was 34 years old, pregnant with Thomas, working double shifts at the diner while Robert worked overtime at the mill. We were barely making ends meet, but we were happy. I might have, I said slowly. There was a blood drive at the community center. They were desperate for donors because there had been some kind of accident, a bus crash, I think. They said my blood was special, that it could help someone. Dr. Chen nodded, pulling out a folder. Mrs. Patterson, I need to show you something, with your permission. I nodded, confused but curious. He opened the folder and showed me an old newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. The headline read, Local woman's blood donation saves prominent senator's life. I stared at the article, the words swimming before my eyes. There was a photo of a woman, younger, thinner, but unmistakably me, standing beside a man in a hospital bed. That's me, I whispered. But I don't remember any senator. They just said someone needed the blood urgently. That's because they kept it quiet for security reasons, Dr. Chen explained. Senator William Morrison was visiting our state when the bus accident happened. He suffered massive internal injuries and needed multiple transfusions. Your blood type was the only match within 500 miles. But why are you telling me this now? Dr. Chen's expression softened. Because Senator Morrison recovered and went on to serve in the Senate for 30 more years. He just retired last year, and he's been trying to track down the woman who saved his life. He's set up a foundation to find and thank anonymous blood donors who made a difference. When I saw your blood type and cross-referenced it with the hospital records from 1968, I realized you were the one he's been looking for. I couldn't speak. My mind was reeling. 57 years ago, while I was struggling to put food on the table for my family, working myself to exhaustion, I'd apparently saved a senator's life. And I'd never even known. I don't understand, I finally managed. Why does this matter now? Because Mrs. Patterson, Senator Morrison wants to meet you. He wants to thank you personally. And, Dr. Chen hesitated, the foundation provides financial support to their donor heroes. Significant financial support. The room seemed to tilt. Financial support? Me? How significant? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. The foundation grants range from $500,000 to $2 million, depending on the circumstances. But more than that, Senator Morrison has devoted the last years of his life to honoring the people who saved him and others like him. He's written about it, spoken about it. You're a hero, Mrs. Patterson. You just never knew it. That night, alone in my hospital room, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. A hero. The word felt foreign in my mouth. I'd never thought of myself as anything special. Just a mother, a wife, a waitress who tried her best. But apparently, while I was struggling to pay for Michael's college textbooks and Jennifer's braces and Thomas's piano lessons, while I was clipping coupons and turning collars on Robert's shirts to make them last another year, I'd saved someone's life. Someone important. And now that someone wanted to thank me. The next morning, Dr. Chen came back with more information. Senator Morrison would like to call you if you're up for it. I want to make sure you're feeling strong enough first. I'm strong enough, I said, and I meant it. Something had shifted inside me overnight. Maybe it was knowing that my life had mattered in ways I'd never imagined. Maybe it was the kindness of the hospital staff when my own family had abandoned me. But I felt different, steadier somehow. Dr. Chen handed me his cell phone. He's waiting. My hands trembled as I put the phone to my ear. Hello? Mrs. Patterson? The voice was deep, warm, grandfatherly. This is William Morrison. I cannot tell you how long I've waited for this moment. Senator Morrison, I said, hardly believing this was happening. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, my dear. I'm the one who needs to speak. In 1968, I was 42 years old with a wife and 3 young children. I'd just won my first Senate seat, and I thought I had the whole world ahead of me. Then that bus lost control. His voice wavered with emotion. I should have died that day, Mrs. Patterson. The doctors told my wife to prepare for the worst. But then you walked into that community center blood drive, pregnant and probably exhausted from work, and you gave your blood without a second thought. You saved my life. Tears were streaming down my face. I didn't know. They never told me who needed it. I just wanted to help. That's exactly why you're a hero, he said softly. You helped without expecting anything in return. For 57 years, I've lived a full life. I've seen my children grow up, met my grandchildren, served my country, tried to make a difference. All because of you. How do you thank someone for your entire life? You don't have to thank me, sir. But I want to. Mrs. Patterson, I want to meet you in person if you'll allow it. And I want to ensure that the foundation I created honors you the way you deserve to be honored. We talked for nearly an hour. He told me about his life, his career, his family. He told me about the foundation he'd started 10 years ago to track down the anonymous heroes who'd saved lives through blood donations. He told me about the other people he'd found and how grateful they were to know their simple act of kindness had mattered so much. And I told him about my life too, about Robert, about my children, about the years of hard work and sacrifice. I found myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone, about the loneliness since Robert died, about my children's distance, about lying alone in this hospital room. When we finally hung up, I felt lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there, and someone had finally helped me set it down. Dr. Chen had been required to contact my emergency contacts about Senator Morrison's call. Apparently, it was protocol when something significant happened with a patient's care. I didn't think much of it at the time, but 3 hours later my phone rang. It was Michael. Mom? What's this about a senator? Not, how are you feeling? Not, I'm sorry I didn't come. Just straight to the senator. Hello, Michael, I said calmly. I'm recovering well, thank you for asking. There was a pause. Right, yeah. How are you feeling? But Mom, Dr. Chen's office left a message saying something about Senator Morrison and a foundation. It turns out I saved his life in 1968. He's been looking for me. Another pause, longer this time. You saved a senator's life? When? How? I explained about the blood drive, about my rare blood type, about the phone call. With each word, I could practically hear Michael's mind working, calculating, assessing what this meant. That's incredible, Mom. Listen, I'm going to come see you right away. I can be there in 2 hours. That's not necessary, Michael. I'm being discharged tomorrow. No, I want to come. I should have come sooner. I've just been so busy, but that's no excuse. I'll be there soon. He hung up before I could respond. 20 minutes later, Jennifer called, then Thomas. Each conversation was variations on the same theme. Shock about the senator, vague apologies for not visiting, promises to come see me immediately. Sarah came in to check my vitals and found me sitting by the window, staring out at the parking lot. "You okay, Mrs. Patterson?" she asked gently. "My children are coming," I said flatly. "That's wonderful. You must be so relieved." I turned to look at her, this sweet young nurse who'd shown me more kindness in 4 days than my own children had in 6 years. "They're not coming because I had a stroke, Sarah. They're coming because of the senator." Her smile faded. She understood immediately. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'm glad this happened. I needed to see the truth clearly." They all arrived within hours of each other, crowding into my small hospital room like they'd been worried sick about me all along. Michael came first, dressed in his expensive suit, his hair graying at the temples but still handsome. "Mom!" He rushed to my bedside, taking my hand. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry I couldn't get here sooner." The deposition ran long, and then there was traffic. "It's fine, Michael," I said quietly. Jennifer flew in from California, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her designer dress probably costing more than I spent on groceries in a year. "Mother, you should have called me directly. I would have come right away, you know I would have." Thomas came with Claire, who hung back near the door, her expression tight and uncomfortable. But Thomas himself sat on the edge of my bed, looking like a little boy again. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have been here. There's no excuse." I looked at my 3 children, these successful, polished adults who bore so little resemblance to the babies I'd rocked, the toddlers I'd chased, the teenagers I'd worried over, and I felt nothing. No surge of joy at seeing them, no relief that they'd finally come, just a quiet, sad recognition of what this moment really was. "Tell me about the senator," Michael said, pulling up a chair. "Dr. Chen said there's a foundation. Have they talked about the grant yet?" There it was. "They mentioned it," I said carefully. "Well, that's wonderful, Mom," Jennifer chimed in. "You deserve to be recognized for what you did. Have they said how much?" "Jennifer," Thomas said sharply, shooting her a look, but I waved my hand. "It's fine. Let's be honest about why we're all here." The room went silent. Claire shifted uncomfortably by the door. Michael had the grace to look embarrassed. "Mom, that's not fair," Jennifer started. "Isn't it?" I said, my voice stronger than it had been in days, maybe stronger than it had been in years. For 6 years I've lived alone in that house. 6 years of holidays by myself. 6 years of doctor's appointments I took the bus to. 6 years of phone calls that went unreturned and promises that next time you'd visit. And now, 4 days after I have a stroke and lie in this hospital room alone, you're all here. Not because you love me, not because you were worried, but because you heard about money. "Mom, that's not true," Michael protested. "We love you." "We've just been busy." "Busy," I repeated softly. "Yes, you've all been very busy. Too busy for your mother, who worked 3 jobs to put you through college. Too busy for the woman who sold her only valuable possession so Jennifer could have straight teeth. Too busy for the mother who went without so you could all have everything." The words kept coming, years of hurt and disappointment pouring out of me like water from a broken dam. "Do you know what I did last Christmas?" I asked, looking at each of them in turn. "I cooked a full turkey dinner with all the trimmings. Mashed potatoes, stuffing, cranberry sauce, 3 different pies. I set the table for 4, even though I knew no one was coming. I did it anyway because I needed to remember what it felt like to cook for my family. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Mom, we invited you to Richard's parents' house in California. A 12-hour flight for an 87-year-old woman with arthritis. And you know what you said when I told you I couldn't make the trip? Well, maybe next year. Not, we'll come to you. Not, let's figure out another time. Just, maybe next year. I turned to Michael. And you, with your big law practice and your important cases. When was the last time you called just to talk? Not to check a box, not to fulfill an obligation, but just to hear your mother's voice. His face reddened, but he said nothing. And Thomas. My voice cracked as I looked at my youngest, my baby. You live 30 minutes away. 30 minutes. And in 6 years I can count on one hand the number of times you visited. Your wife made it clear I wasn't welcome, and you let her. Claire stepped forward, her face flushed. Now wait just a minute. No, you wait, I said, with a strength in my voice that surprised even me. I'm 87 years old. I had a stroke. I could have died alone on that grocery store floor, and it would have taken you weeks to notice because none of you call, none of you visit, none of you care, not until you heard there might be money involved. The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah appeared in the doorway, probably alerted by the raised voices. Is everything okay here? Everything is fine, I said, smiling at her. My children were just leaving. Mom, Thomas started. I'd like to rest now, I said firmly. The nurse needs to check my vitals, and I'm tired. One by one, they filed out, shooting looks at each other, whispering in the hallway. I could hear Claire's sharp voice saying something about ungrateful, and what else were we supposed to do? Sarah closed the door behind them and turned to me with admiration in her eyes. Mrs. Patterson, that was amazing. That was it? I asked, suddenly feeling very tired. Or was it just sad? Both, she said honestly, helping me lie back down. But mostly amazing. You stood up for yourself. That takes courage. 2 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. Dr. Chen arranged for a car service to take me home, not because I couldn't take the bus, but because Senator Morrison's foundation had already begun processing my case and had insisted on covering all my medical expenses and transportation. My house on Maple Street looked exactly as I'd left it. The garden needed weeding. The mailbox was overflowing. The silence was overwhelming. But I wasn't alone for long. The next afternoon, a long black car pulled up in front of my house. I watched from the window as an elderly man with silver hair and kind eyes stepped out, helped by a younger woman who must have been his assistant or daughter. I opened the door before he could knock. Mrs. Patterson, Senator Morrison said, his voice warm and familiar from our phone call. May I come in? I invited them inside, suddenly self-conscious about my modest home with its worn furniture and outdated decor. But Senator Morrison didn't seem to notice or care. He sat in my old armchair, Robert's chair, and looked at me with such genuine gratitude that I felt tears spring to my eyes. Thank you for agreeing to meet me, he said. I know this must all be overwhelming. The woman with him, his daughter Margaret, as it turned out, smiled at me. Dad's been talking about nothing else since Dr. Chen called. You've given him such joy. We talked for hours. He told me about the bus accident in detail, about the terrifying moments when he thought he'd never see his family again, about waking up and learning that a stranger's blood had saved his life. For years I tried to find you, he explained. But back then, donor information was protected differently. It wasn't until I retired and started the foundation that I had the resources and legal standing to search properly. We've found 17 donors so far. You're the 18th. And they all received grants? I asked, still not quite believing this was real. More than grants, Margaret interjected. Dad believes in changing lives. The foundation provides financial support, yes, but also covers medical expenses, housing assistance if needed, educational funds for families, whatever helps make their remaining years comfortable and dignified. Senator Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Patterson, your grant amount is $1.5 million. But I want you to understand something. This isn't charity. This isn't a handout. This is a debt I'm paying. Without you, I wouldn't have met my grandchildren. I wouldn't have served 3 more terms. I wouldn't have been there when my wife battled cancer 10 years ago. You gave me my life. This is the least I can do. I couldn't speak. $1.5 million. The number was incomprehensible. I'd never had more than a few $1,000s in my bank account at any given time. News of Senator Morrison's visit spread quickly. Small towns are like that. Everyone knows everything. Within days, my children were back, this time with different attitudes. Michael brought flowers and a box of my favorite chocolates. Jennifer video called every evening, suddenly interested in my day-to-day life. Thomas showed up with takeout dinner, though Claire remained noticeably absent. Mom, we need to talk about your finances, Michael said during one visit, his lawyer voice in full effect. With this kind of money, you need to make sure it's properly invested and protected. I can help with that, Jennifer added via video. Richard knows some excellent financial advisors. I've already spoken to someone, I said calmly. Senator Morrison's foundation connected me with their financial team. Everything is being handled. The disappointment on their faces was almost comical. But Mom, we're your children, Michael pressed. We should be involved in these decisions. Why? The question hung in the air. You weren't involved in any other part of my life. That's not fair, Jennifer protested from the screen. We've been trying to reconnect. We admitted we were wrong. You admitted you were wrong after you found out about the money, I corrected gently. There's a difference. Thomas, who'd been quiet, finally spoke up. She's right. Mom's right. We were terrible to her, and we only came back when we thought there was something in it for us. Michael shot him a look, but Thomas continued. I'm not saying I'm any better than you two. I'm just saying we need to be honest. Mom deserves that at least. I looked at my youngest son, my baby who'd grown into a man I barely recognized, and saw a glimmer of the boy I'd raised, the one with the gentle heart. Thank you for saying that, Thomas, I said softly. Over the following weeks, Senator Morrison became a regular visitor, then a friend. He was funny and kind, full of stories about his years in Washington, but equally interested in hearing about my life. He wanted to know about Robert, about raising my children during the hard times, about my years at the diner. You're a remarkable woman, he told me one afternoon over tea in my kitchen. Not because you saved my life, though I'll never stop being grateful for that, but because of who you are, the strength, the grace, the dignity you've maintained even when your own family failed you. They're not bad people, I said, still defending them out of habit. No, but they're flawed ones. We all are. He paused, stirring his tea. You know, when my children were young, I was so focused on my career that I missed a lot. Soccer games, school plays, bedtime stories. I thought providing for them financially was enough. It took almost losing everything in that accident to realize what really mattered. Did they forgive you? Eventually. But I had to earn it back. I had to show up, be present, put in the work. That's what your children need to do, Ellen. Not just show up now because of money, but show up every day going forward because you're their mother and you deserve their love. With the Foundation's financial advisor, I made careful plans for my newfound wealth. I paid off my mortgage, all $23,000 that remained on the house Robert and I had bought for $45,000 in 1972. I set up a modest trust that would provide me with monthly income for the rest of my life. I established a college fund for my grandchildren, including Michael's kids, Jennifer's daughter, and any future grandchildren that might come along. And then I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I donated $500,000 to the hospital where I'd been treated, specifically designated for their elder care program and staff appreciation fund. Sarah, Patricia, Marcus, and all the others who'd shown me kindness when my own family wouldn't. They deserved to be recognized. The hospital held a small ceremony, and I stood there in my best dress while the administrator thanked me. Sarah cried. So did Patricia. Marcus gave me a hug and whispered, "Abuela would be proud of you." My children attended the ceremony, standing in the back, watching as strangers celebrated their mother. I wondered what they were thinking. Did they feel ashamed, proud, jealous? After the ceremony, I invited them all to dinner at my house, a proper family dinner, 6 o'clock sharp, like the old days. They came, all three of them, sitting around my old dining table while I served pot roast and potatoes, green beans, and homemade rolls. For a while, it felt almost normal, almost like the family we used to be. But after dinner, I asked them to stay seated. "I have something to say." They exchanged nervous glances. "I forgive you," I started, and I saw their shoulders relax. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back to the way things were. "What do you mean?" Jennifer asked. "I mean that I'm setting boundaries. If you want to be part of my life going forward, it has to be because you love me, not because of what I can give you. I'm not going to be the grandmother who hands out money or pays for things to earn your attention." "Mom, we never expected," Michael began. "Let me finish," I said firmly. "The college funds for the grandchildren are set up. They'll receive them when they turn 18, regardless of our relationship. But beyond that, my finances are my own. I'm not discussing them with you. I'm not asking for your input. And I'm not letting you make me feel guilty for how I choose to spend or donate my money." Claire, who'd actually come this time, opened her mouth as if to say something, but Thomas put his hand on her arm, stopping her. "Secondly," I continued, "if you want to see me, you need to show up regularly. Not just when it's convenient, not just on holidays. I want phone calls, I want visits. I want to feel like I matter to you, not like I'm an obligation you check off your list." "That's fair," Thomas said quietly. "And finally, I need you to understand that I'm not the same woman I was. The woman who would accept crumbs of affection and be grateful for them. The woman who would pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. That woman died alone in a hospital room. The woman sitting here now has higher standards." The months that followed brought changes I never expected. Senator Morrison invited me to Washington, D.C. to attend a foundation gala where all the donor heroes were honored. I flew first class for the first time in my life, stayed in a beautiful hotel, and wore a dress that didn't come from a thrift store. At the gala, I met the other 17 donors the foundation had found. Each had their own story: a construction worker who donated during his lunch break, a college student who'd given blood to help pay for textbooks, a grandmother like me who'd just been trying to help. All of us had saved lives without knowing it. All of us had gone on with our ordinary lives, while the people we saved went on to do extraordinary things. Senator Morrison gave a speech that night, talking about each of us, about the ripple effects of kindness, about how one small act could change the world. When he talked about me, he mentioned my years at the diner, my sacrifices for my children, my strength in the face of loneliness. Ellen Patterson represents the best of humanity, he said, his voice carrying through the ballroom. She gave when she had nothing. She helped without expectation of reward. And she maintained her dignity and grace, even when life was incredibly hard. She is my hero, and I am honored to call her my friend. I cried during that speech, happy tears this time. My children watched it all on a live stream. Michael called afterward, his voice thick with emotion. Mom, I had no idea. No idea what you'd been through, what you'd sacrificed. I'm so sorry. I know, honey, I said, but sorry isn't enough. Show me. And slowly, haltingly, he did. They all did. Michael started calling every Sunday evening, just to chat. He told me about his cases, his kids, his life. And he asked about mine. Really asked, really listened. Jennifer planned a trip home, just her, without Richard or her daughter. I want it to be just us, Mom. Mother-daughter time, like we used to have. Thomas showed up every Saturday morning with coffee and donuts. Sometimes we'd talk. Sometimes we'd just sit in comfortable silence, working on the crossword puzzle together like he used to do with his dad. Were they perfect? No. Did they sometimes slip back into old patterns? Yes. But they were trying, genuinely trying, and that was more than I'd had in 6 years. On what would have been Robert's 88th birthday, I visited his grave with fresh flowers, roses, his favorite. I sat on the bench nearby and told him everything that had happened. Can you believe it, honey? Me, a hero. You always said I was special, but I never believed you. Maybe I should have. I smiled through my tears. The kids are coming around. Slowly. I don't know if we'll ever get back what we lost, but at least we're building something new. Something more honest. The wind rustled through the trees, and I could almost hear his voice. I'm proud of you, Ellen. I always was. I'd made a decision, sitting there in the cemetery, about what to do with the rest of my money. The foundation had suggested I might want to start my own charity or donation program, and I'd finally figured out what felt right. I created the Invisible Angels Fund, a program to support elderly people who'd been abandoned by their families. It would pay for companion services, home care, emergency medical expenses, and small comfort items that insurance didn't cover. Things like Sarah's decent coffee, Marcus's kindness, Patricia's lunch break company. Because I'd learned something important in that hospital room. Sometimes the people who aren't related to you by blood are the ones who become your real family. The fund's first recipient was an 82-year-old man in the same hospital where I'd been treated. No visitors, no family, just sitting alone, waiting to either recover or die. The fund paid for a private nurse, meals from his favorite restaurant, and a volunteer visitor program. Sarah texted me a photo of him smiling for the first time in weeks. You did this, she wrote. You're still saving lives. Now, sitting here in my comfortable chair by the window, looking out at the garden I've finally hired someone to help me maintain, I think about everything that's happened. How a simple act of kindness 57 years ago came back to bless me in ways I never imagined. How being left alone in a hospital room taught me my worth. How losing my family for a while helped me find myself. People ask me if I'm angry at my children for abandoning me. The truth is, I was. Deeply, painfully angry. But anger is a heavy thing to carry when you're 87 years old. I've chosen to let it go, not for them, but for me. I've learned that you can't control how people treat you. You can only control how you respond. And I chose to respond with boundaries, with self-respect, with the understanding that I deserve better. I've learned that real family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up. It's about being present. It's about loving someone even when it's inconvenient. I've learned that it's never too late to start over, never too late to set boundaries, never too late to discover your own worth. And I've learned that sometimes the universe has a funny way of reminding you that your life matters, that your kindness matters, that you matter. My children and we're rebuilding. It's slow work, like learning to walk again after a stroke. Some days are better than others, but we're trying, and that's something. Last week, Michael brought his kids to visit. My grandchildren, whom I barely knew, spent the afternoon with me. We baked cookies together, chocolate chip, just like I used to make for their father. The youngest, Emily, climbed into my lap and said, "Daddy says you're a hero, Grandma." "Do I look like a hero?" I asked, smiling. "You look like a grandma," she said seriously. "But Daddy says you can be both." Out of the mouths of babes. So here I am, an 87-year-old woman who saved a senator's life without knowing it, who was abandoned by her children and then found again, who learned that her worth wasn't determined by others' treatment of her. If you're watching this and you're going through something similar, if your children have forgotten you, if your family has left you behind, if you feel invisible and unimportant, I want you to hear this. You are not invisible. You matter. Your life has value beyond what you can give to others. Set your boundaries. Demand better. Don't settle for crumbs of affection when you deserve the whole feast. And remember this, kindness always comes back. Maybe not right away, maybe not in the way you expect, but it comes back. That blood I donated 57 years ago saved a life, and that life came back to save mine when I needed it most. So be kind, even when it's hard. Show up for others, even when they don't show up for you. Because you're not doing it for them. You're doing it because that's who you are. And one day, maybe when you're 87 years old and sitting alone in a hospital room, maybe that kindness will find its way back to you. Maybe it will remind you that your life was meaningful, that you were important, that you were loved, because you are. You always were. I'm Ellen Patterson, and this is my story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with me. And remember, it's never too late to discover that you're a hero. You just might not know it yet.